Hello and good morning, Cisco Networking Academy instructors taking the Python Programmability Initiative course. In this brief video tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at the behavior of Python's built-in ID function and the is operator to see how the behavior differs when running it from the interactive interpreter command line prompt or when it's being used in a script. This was an amazing question posed by Nora in the WebEx team's chat room as she was doing some investigation as to how the is keyword and the ID function were providing her with confusing output. So let's go ahead and transition to idle. And let's write in a few lines of code here, and we'll use the same values that Nora used in her question. So if we create a variable a, and we assign it the value of 13579, and then we create the variable b, and we assign it the exact same value of 13579, remember that we're doing this from the interactive interpreter. Now, when I want to check the equality of two objects, I should always use a equal equal, or in other words, the equality operator is what should be used. Now, this returns true because those values are in fact equal. Another thing to note is that both of the values are well outside the range of Python's interned value set, which runs from -5 to 256. So now let's go ahead and take a look at what happens when we say A is B. And we get back false. And this is to be expected because, again, both A and B have values that are outside Python's interned integer range. To see what we're talking about, if I was to say X gets the value of 255 and Y gets the value of 255, if we were to say IDX and IDY, you'll notice that we receive back the same location in memory where these objects reside. Now, if I say X equal Y, and then I say X is Y, we receive true for both of those because here these integer values are within the interned, and think of it as simply an optimization performed by Python to pre-stage or cache a range of integer immutable values from -5 to 256 in memory for use so that new objects aren't always being created. Now, back to the original question, which is we receive this output here, and this is 100% spot on because these are outside of the interned range. In fact, if I said IDA and then we said IDB, you would notice that these are two mutually exclusive objects that reside at different locations in memory. And this is working exactly as we would anticipate that it should work, based off everything we've learned to this point in the course. However, what Nora ran into is she decided to take those same lines of code and to place them into a Python script. In other words, simply a file that contains her code so she could run it as a script. So let's go ahead and run this code and see what happens. Now, what you'll notice is that both statements here print true. Now, this is in stark contrast to what we saw earlier from the interactive interpreter command line prompt, where the first equality check was true because the values are the same. However, when looking to see if the object was the same, we received false. But when run in a script, for some reason, we're now seeing that both statements are returning true. And the question was, why is this? Now, what's happening here is what Python will refer to as a compilation unit. In other words, here on the interactive interpreter CLI, when I type in X gets 100, that by itself is a compilation unit. because that line of code has been run, and now we're on to the next line. So REPL, read, evaluate, print, loop, is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, and now it puts us onto this new line. So Python went ahead, ran that code, think of it as a compilation unit, and now we're on to the next compilation unit. So when I say y gets 100, that would be a totally different compilation unit. Now, granted, those values are within that interned range. However, I'm just simply demonstrating that those are two mutually exclusive REPLs that I just ran. In other words, they're not being treated or folded together and compiled together as a single unit. And that's what's happening when you're using the interactive interpreter, is that these are mutually exclusive, independent compilation units. Now over to the file. When Python runs the file, remember that there's going to be a conversion to bytecode. And based on the Python implementation, the behavior may vary. However, what Nora was seeing and what we're seeing here by this returning true for both is that Python is treating all of the code in this file as a single compilation unit because it's all being compiled together. And one of the optimizations that certain Python implementations, specifically the one that we're using, will employ is to fold together or to treat immutable objects such as strings or integers as single references to a value. So in other words, these two lines of code, when compiled in a file, are treated as a single compilation unit, which is why A equals B with the equality operator, which we anticipate that we would see anyway, because that's checking for the numerical value. And again, that is what should be used when trying to check for equality. Because as we've seen, the A is B will also return true from the file when the file is run as a Python script, because these are being folded together. Now, the same is true of strings. So let's take a look at an example in this file here. If I was to say name1 gets Bob Smith Esquire, and then name2 gets Bob Smith Esquire. Now, those are the same string, and if I were to run that same code over here, let's say name1 gets Bob Smith Esquire, Esquire. And let me make sure that I put the comma in there, and I did. And so then here we're going to say name2 gets Bob Smith Esquire. Now, when I say name1, is it equal to name2, we're going to receive true. However, now when I say name1 is name2, remember these were mutually exclusive compilation events from the interactive interpreter command line. We receive false, like we did when using the integer. Now let's come back over here and let's run these additional print statements to say name1 is equal to name2. And then we're also going to print is name1 name2. In other words, are they the same object? Are both of those variable name references pointing to the same object in memory? In other words, in the script, are these being folded together? So let's go ahead and run this and see. And the answer is yes. And so as you can see, Python, again, depending upon the installation or the version of Python that you're running, the implementation of Python, you may end up with results similar to this, where from the interactive interpreter, Python gives you one result when you're using the is operator, and when the is operator is used in a script, you receive another result. And again, all that's happening here is that Python is folding those values which are identical together as an optimization technique. So, from the interactive interpreter command line, how might we check this? Well, remember, I can say A gets 13,579, and that's its own compilation unit, its own compilation event from the CLI. I could say B gets 13,579. And when we say A is B, we get false. Now, how might I fold these together? Remember, I could say A comma B gets the value of 13,579 comma 13,579. In other words, I'm assigning to both A and B in a single compilation unit. All together, I'm assigning them both the same value. So the question now is A equal to B? And we know that that's going to be true. And finally, let's test that compilation unit theory. Did it fold those together for me, even though we're on the CLI, because I combined the instantiation of both variable names there, A and B, along with initializing their values. So A is B. And we receive true, just like we did here in the script when that script, when compiled, is treated as a single compilation event. All right, well, that is going to wrap up this brief video tutorial. Again, just wanting to discuss and document a little closer, with a little bit more detail, the response to the question that was posed by Nora. All right, thank you for watching. If you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to contact me in WebEx Teams, and looking forward to seeing you all on Thursday evening.